Hi, this is Bob Christoffel, Manager of Benefit Education at Wespath Benefits and Investments. Thank you for joining me. The focus of this mini webinar will be debt reduction. Debt can have a significant impact on your financial dimension of well-being and also negatively impact your physical, social, emotional, and spiritual dimensions. All financial planning starts with a conversation with your family unit, significant other, partner, or spouse. Include all that are impacted by your financial decisions. The decisions you make today will impact what life looks like down the road. You need to find a life balance. There may be reasonable trade-offs to be made and adjustments to be made on an ongoing basis. After all, financial planning is about trade-offs and choices. The objectives of this mini webinar is to consider different debt reduction strategies to help reduce your overall level of debt. Also to learn how Wespath helps support your efforts through debt management assistance from EY Financial Planning Services, and to take the next steps along your financial journey. Debt has been identified as a significant cause of stress among our clergy and lay participants. It is a problem that really has grown over long periods of time and increased by nearly 160% for American households approaching retirement. And this is due largely because of people's willingness to assume higher levels of debt through mortgages, higher student loans, and really just an overall comfort with debt. Having debt prevents you from attaining your financial goals. About a year ago, Wespath polled our readers of the HARC quarterly newsletter, which comes with your United Methodist Personal Investment Plan statement. And the poll was regarding debt. And the results really were amazing. 54% of the respondents said that debt was impeding their ability to save for retirement. And an additional 58% of the respondents were more than $20,000 in debt. Let's get started by asking ourselves a question. How did you get there? It could be through medical expenses, unemployment or reduced income, through a divorce, through student loans accumulating, through unexpected expenses that come up, things you did not anticipate, and also through just basic overspending of your resources. Let's examine more closely some of these sources of debt. Many people are living paycheck to paycheck, so when an unexpected expense pops up, it begins a cycle of debt. One of these, the most common, could be a medical expense or even a dental expense. These can come with very high out-of-pocket costs. On the other side of the life cycle, the costs of raising children are also squeezing families. In many places, childcare costs more than the average rent or mortgage payments. And with the cost of education growing many times faster than the cost of living, many of us can face staggering student loan payments for many years following graduation. The good news is that it's never too late to get a handle on your finances. Regardless of how you got into this debt, it may be time to take an inventory of your spending and look for lower interest rate options for paying down, for reducing that debt. You can start to put yourself back on a path to ultimately being debt-free. Again, financial planning is about trade-offs and making choices. We all of us have limited resources and very competing demands for those limited resources. Debt reduction should be made a priority to achieve or improve your overall financial well-being. The first step, and this makes a lot of sense, is to stop accumulating additional debt. An example would be for every $1,000 you spend on a credit card could cost you an extra $474 in interest if you're only making the minimum payments. And this assumes an 18% interest rate. It could take you up to 71 months to pay that off, making the minimum payments. You also need to make sure you pay above the minimum due each month so that your debt isn't increasing due to fees or late penalties. This means that you'll have to create and stick to a budget. Wespath will also be offering a mini webinar in this series on cash flow and budgeting to help you get started. Be a debt detective. Now that you've thought about stopping accumulating additional debt, you'll need a clear picture of the total amount of debt you actually have right now and begin a plan to pay that back. To gather this information will require you to be a debt detective and think about everything that you owe, whether it's credit cards, if you have a mortgage, if you have car loans, student loans for yourself or for your children, whether you have medical debt, if you have any bills that are past due, any taxes or penalties that are past due, you need to list everything and figure out how much interest you're paying on these loans and when these debts need to be repaid by. For example, many mortgages, student loans, and car loans typically have a monthly payment due over a very set period of time, and often they'll have a fixed interest rate. You also need to look at your budget to determine how much you can afford to pay toward your debt, and then you'll have a decision to make on how to allocate those payments. You want to be sure to pay, again, at least the minimum for every loan, but if you have extra resources available, who do you want to pay first? Another interesting fact, nearly 1/3 of Americans with credit card debt only pay the minimum amount due. Paying the minimum amount due is not a good strategy to reduce your credit card balances. Always try to pay more than the minimum and always be sure to make your payments on time. If you don't, this will lead to penalties. If you don't, this could lead to adverse effects on your credit rating. Again, being a debt detective, we encourage you to check any bills or expenses you have very carefully for errors. Review all your medical bills carefully. Consider debt settlement, although this may be a long shot, it can help some of our participants. Everyone makes mistakes, and that includes your doctors, hospitals, or even cashiers at the store. You may know someone who's been accidentally overcharged from time to time. Check on your medical bills for mismatched codes, upcoding, duplicate billing, or unbundling services where you're charged separate payments when they should have been combined under one umbrella diagnosis or code. Don't be afraid to call your doctor and ask questions. Call the hospital and ask questions. Call your insurance provider and ask questions. Sometimes it is possible to negotiate new payment terms or even a payoff for less than you owe if you are in extreme, dire financial situations. If your debt has already gone to collection, it's possible the collection company purchased your debt for pennies on the dollar and might be willing to take a reduced lump payment rather than taking the risk that you're never going to pay at all. The easiest way to start negotiations is to inform the caller that you want to settle this debt, that you're taking responsibility for it. There are some debt settlement companies designed to help you with this process. Some of them charge a fee based upon the debt you owe. It is good advice to steer clear of for-profit debt help and don't agree to any terms unless you understand what is expected from you completely and you see this agreement in writing. That makes good sense. Debt settlements can have huge downsides. Even if you get your credit to agree to reduce debt, it could be reported on your credit report and may indeed lower your credit score. Let's examine some payoff strategies. Consolidating your debt can be a helpful strategy. It is a form of debt refinancing where you would take out one loan to pay off several other loans. This would reduce the number of separate payments you need to make. One example of debt consolidation would be to transfer high interest credit card balance to a low interest credit card balance. But be sure that you are saving after accounting for transfer fees and any additional fees, and that you can pay off the debt in the terms you have agreed to. There are really two different schools of thought on debt repayments, and they're both good and they're both helpful. They're just different. Some people prefer to pay off the costliest debt first and paying off the smallest balances first. If your highest interest debt is your largest balance, it may be more realistic to address the small balances first, even if the other approach may save you money on interest. As you pay off these small balances, it is important to use the money you were formerly paying for that debt for the next small debt until you've paid it all off. Since your goal here is really twofold, to pay off debt and not incur any additional debt, you really need to start an emergency fund. An emergency fund is an amount of money that you have set aside to cover unexpected financial surprises or emergencies that life throws your way. Having this emergency fund established prevents you from having to pay unexpected expenses on credit and then incurring additional or extra debt and continuing this cycle. EY Financial Planning Services can help you evaluate the best way to approach your debt repayment plan. More information about EY services available later in this webinar. Your debt may actually feel insurmountable at times and quite overwhelming. You might not think you have any money to pay extra toward anything. Make sure you've done everything you can do to reduce your expenses. Shop around to make sure you're getting the best possible price for your home and auto insurance, home alarms, cell phone contracts, internet, and other services that you incur. The money you save can be used to pay off your debt even more aggressively. Any unexpected or irregular income, such as bonuses, tax refunds, gift from congregations or friends, stipends, honorariums, should be used for debt repayment. You can treat yourself when you're debt-free. You can also look for ways to generate extra income. What resources are available for our participants? We have a 2020 Vision webinar series. Some of these topics will include cash flow and budgeting, saving on healthcare expenses, and saving and investing your health savings accounts. And that's in addition to our regular UMPIP savings plan webinar series. A little bit more about EY Financial Planning Services. These are important resources available to eligible participants. EY has a lot of tools, articles, calculators, and resources available for you at no direct cost. And this is important. It's confidential. This is between you and EY. It goes nowhere else. It's professional, and EY has no hidden agenda. I would urge you to contact EY if you have significant burden or you're burdened by debt. EY can help you establish a budget, provide you with a retirement funding analysis, including your spouse's benefits. EY can help you with your contributions to UMPIP, whether you make them before, after tax, or Roth contributions. EY can help you with your investment allocations, consider your spouse's investments or defined contribution plans. EY can help you in analyzing how much you can afford to purchase a home in retirement, buying insurance. Thank you for joining us on this webinar. It is always important in this webinar series to look back and reflect on things that we can do differently, to take action as a result of these webinars. Be a debt detective to determine your debt balances, what are the interest rates, and make sure this is all accurate information. If you can attempt to negotiate lower rates and terms, consolidate debt, choose a method of debt repayment that you are comfortable with, whether it's paying off the highest interest rate loans first or the smaller balances for a psychological boost. And be sure, please call EY reach out to them for help along the way. At this moment, I would just like to thank you for joining us on this webinar, and I would encourage you to join us in the entire Vision 2020 webinar series. Thank you very much for your time.